In 1983, Brian returned from the military to marry me. At his insistence, I gave up a job opportunity and handed it over to his sister Cindy. I stayed behind in my hometown, living like a widow for 30 years. After taking care of his parents until they passed away, I found a chance to visit him at the base, only to discover that our marriage had been a complete sham. He had 2 children with Cindy. Seeing those kids, already around 30 years old, I confronted Brian, and we had a huge argument. He used the excuse of me sabotaging a military marriage to send me to prison. Years of hard labor destroyed my health, and I died of a serious illness behind bars. When I opened my eyes, I had gone back to the moment when Brian proposed to me. He said the same thing he had in the past. I can marry you, but you need to give the job opportunity to Cindy. She needs it more than you do. My first instinct was to rip that shameless face of his apart. I looked at the handsome man in front of me. There was only disgust in his eyes. None of the bashfulness one would have when confessing their love. That was when I knew I had truly been reborn. My emotions surged wildly. Seeing me speechless, Brian assumed I was too happy to speak and smiled smugly. In a cold voice he said, "Do you understand what I mean? If you want to marry me, you have to give up the job to Cindy. She needs it more to make a living. Your parents are both employed, and you'll have other opportunities. You don't need this position that badly, right?" He said it like he was scolding me, but what gave him that right? In my past life, I had been secretly in love with Brian for 3 years. So, when he said he wanted to marry me, I agreed without hesitation. After hearing about Cindy's situation, I softened and gave her the job opportunity that was originally meant for me. That job placement at the military hospital was gone. When the hospital director found out, he thought I lacked ambition and never gave me another chance to be promoted. Eventually, he used an excuse to transfer me from doctor to nurse, saying it was at Brian's request. He thought it would help me focus more on the family. From that point on, I clung to a marriage certificate and worked as a low-level nurse in my hometown, taking care of Brian's parents. Brian always used work as an excuse to only come home once every 2 to 3 years. Every time, he would refuse to share a bed with me. He claimed it was out of respect, that he didn't see me as a maid, and promised that one day he would give me the dignity I deserved. I waited like that for 30 years, tending to his parents until they passed. Then, I packed my things and went to the base to find Brian, thinking I'd finally received the respect I had been promised and his heartfelt care. But what I saw instead was Brian and Cindy walking hand in hand, accompanied by a boy and a girl who called them Mom and Dad, 2 children who looked to be nearly 30 years old. Only then did I realize how thoroughly I had been deceived. It was true. Brian had married Cindy behind my back and started a family with her. I had become the world's biggest joke. In a rage, I charged at Brian and Cindy, beating them both. Brian shielded Cindy and shoved me to the ground. I was taken away by security. I tried to explain everything to the authorities, but Brian claimed I was the one clinging to him, that the marriage certificate I had was a fake I had forged. That was when I finally realized he never intended to give me any dignity. He had used me completely and was now trying to shift every last bit of blame onto me. I grabbed the old, worn-out marriage certificate that I had looked at countless times over the years. What once brought me comfort now stabbed me in the eyes. Under the stunned gaze of everyone present, I tore it to shreds and flung the pieces at Brian, cursing him to die a miserable death. He said I was crazy, claimed I had shamelessly forced myself into his family, and that I had used public pressure to coerce him into marrying me. He said the reason he only came home every 2 or 3 years was to avoid me, and he never brought Cindy home because he was afraid I'd hurt his wife and children in a fit of rage. His superiors said they had already been more than kind to me. In the end, I was almost executed for sabotaging a military marriage and causing the deaths of 2 elderly people. I don't know who pleaded for mercy, but in the end, I was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Every day in that prison, I cursed Brian and Cindy, wishing they would rot in the deepest level of hell, dragging their children down with them. Years of hard labor and mistreatment by my in-laws pushed my body to its breaking point. I suffered a heart attack in prison. Maybe the hatred in my heart was too strong, because when I died, I was reborn. For once, the heavens had opened their eyes. This time, I would drag Brian and Cindy into the depths of despair. Did you even understand what I just said? Brian finally lost his patience when he saw me zoning out. His tone turned cold and forceful. I suppressed the urge to kill him and calmly replied, "Yes, I understood you clearly. But you're mistaken. I have no romantic feelings for you, so I won't marry you. As for the job opportunity, since you're so eager to help your sister, then use your connections to get her a transfer. I earned this opportunity on my own, through merit. There's no reason I should give it up to someone who's pulling strings behind the scenes." I mocked Cindy, implying she was nothing but an empty shell. Without waiting to see Brian's sour expression, I turned to leave. I couldn't stand the sight of his face for even one more second, afraid I might lose control and claw at that face that filled me with such hatred. Brian quickly stepped forward to block my path. He didn't even want to touch me and looked at me with sheer disgust. "Isn't marrying me what you've always wanted? What are you pretending for now? Just because you come from a good family, you think you can toy with others as you please? Let me tell you, you only get one chance. If you don't take it, I'm not going to bring up marriage again. Don't regret it." That sentence jolted my memory. Brian had actually approached me a few days ago, asking me to voluntarily give the job to Cindy. I'd lashed out and told him that if he married me, I'd hand over the position. Turns out he really did love Cindy. He was willing to go so far as to marry me just for her benefit. Even if it was all fake, it still disgusted me. Listening to him now, I could only blame myself for being so pathetic. But his humiliation only made my mind clearer. This scumbag had to pay. I stepped forward. Brian, startled, immediately backed away, widening the distance between us. I was stunned that I had never noticed how much he had actually loathed me in the past. And I had foolishly mistaken his avoidance for respect. What a blind fool I had been. "Brian, with the way you're treating me now, I have to ask, did you ever truly want to marry me?" His body stiffened for a moment. He looked at me, suddenly clenched his fists, and said with the same cold indifference, "If you still want to marry me, hand over your household registration book. Tomorrow I'll have someone process the marriage certificate. As for the wedding photo, we'll skip it because time's short. Once we're registered, I'll head back to the base. We'll postpone the banquet. But today, you have to tell the hospital director that you're giving the job to Cindy." I let out a cold laugh in my heart. Even the tactics he used against me hadn't changed. I was just too stupid in my past life to see it. I never once suspected there was anything going on between him and Cindy. I even felt sorry for him and, after getting the marriage certificate, immediately handed over my position to her. But now I understand, it was all a setup. They must have planned it together, probably even left for the base hand in hand. What a lovely pair of lovebirds, soaring side by side while I was left in a living hell. My once promising future had become a lifelong tragedy, all because I paved the way for them. The hatred I felt for them made my teeth ache. With a firm tone I said, "I'm not marrying you. I was just joking earlier. Let me say it again. I have no romantic feelings for you. And I'm not giving my job to Cindy. If she wants the opportunity, she should earn it herself. I believe in the director's judgment. It's fair and just. Cheating and backdoor dealings aren't part of my family's values." Brian didn't react right away to me refusing marriage, but the moment I said I wouldn't give up the job, his face darkened. His eyes turned cold and sharp. "What's that supposed to mean? You think you're better than everyone else just because of your background? If it weren't for your privileged upbringing, do you think your skills alone would have landed you this transfer? Cindy is no worse than you. Your parents pulled strings for you, didn't they? Is that what your so-called family values are?" In truth, my medical skills were well recognized by patients at the hospital. The director himself said I was the most promising among the younger generation, and that, with perseverance, I could make a real impact. But in my past life, after I registered the marriage with Brian, after that, even the hospital director began treating me coldly. I was stuck in a nurse's position, struggling just to hold on. I never got another chance to enter an operating room, and could only stand by watching others save lives with envy in my heart. In my dreams, I had rescued people countless times, but every time I woke up, I was still just a plain woman trying to please her husband and in-laws. The hands that once held surgical blades had become rough and calloused from endless housework. The truth was, Brian had never once truly liked me. Not from the beginning to the end. And because of me, he also looked down on my parents. In my previous life, I severed ties with my family just to marry him. I didn't see them again until they were dead. Even then, they were still thinking of me. They left me a considerable inheritance. I took that inheritance and went to find Brian, but what I got in return was 10 years in prison. Brian could insult me all he wanted, but the moment he dared to speak ill of my parents, I couldn't take it. Taking advantage of his inattention, I rushed forward and scratched his face. I only hated that I hadn't grown my nails longer. Otherwise, I could have left him disfigured. Brian screamed in pain and shoved me hard. I staggered but managed to regain my balance, staring at him with pure hatred in my eyes. He was clearly shaken by my sudden attack. His voice trembled as he tried to sound stern. You've gone crazy. I turned toward the courtyard and yelled, "Help! Somebody help! Brian's harassing me! Somebody call the police!" My voice drew a small crowd. Brian, clutching his face, glared at me with wide eyes and quickly left. I spat in his direction, then looked up and met the gaze of a man standing beyond the low wall. Everyone else had dispersed, but he was still there, watching me. I rolled my eyes at him, projecting my anger at Brian onto him too. "What are you looking at? Never seen a beautiful woman lose it before," I snapped. Then I spun around and went inside, grumbling under my breath, "What bad luck. Who knows what kind of germs Brian might have. I need to disinfect everything. There's not even a rabies vaccine available these days. I'd better be careful." Just then, I heard a soft chuckle behind me. I turned and glared at the man. "Why are you still here? Want me to scratch a map onto your face too?" I barked. Unbothered, the man walked over, carrying a can of preserved food and a bag of candy. He smiled gently and said, "I'm Liam Evans, one of Mr. Lynn's former students. I came to visit him. Is he home?" My face instantly turned red. I hurried to explain. "Just now, that wasn't a tantrum or anything. That guy Brian has been pestering me." I kept digging myself deeper. My dad raised me to be respectful and polite. The more I talked, the worse it sounded. Liam's soft smile made my face burn even hotter. You should come in," I finally mumbled, completely deflated. I led him into the house. His voice remained calm and warm. "Mr. Lynn and his wife probably mentioned me. They said I might come by." I looked at him more closely and offered a polite smile. "They did. They talk about you all the time, say you're even more like their real child than I am. Just a few days ago, they said you'd be coming home. Please, Liam, have a seat. I'll make you some tea." I really was happy to see him. So much so that I pulled out my dad's treasured tea leaves for him. In my past life, I had disappointed my parents so deeply, and my marriage had brought me no happiness. I was too ashamed to go home and see them. Later, I heard that Liam visited them every year. He arranged their hospital care when they were gravely ill. I once snuck back to see them and found him keeping vigil at their bedside through the night. I had been so moved that I even made a prayer tablet for him at the temple. Dad always said Liam was his most accomplished student. It was a shame he dropped out to join the military. I had met him when I was little, but I couldn't remember what he looked like back then. All I knew was that his family had been poor. He was an orphan. After his parents died, he lived with his grandmother until she passed away too. My dad sponsored his schooling through middle school. "Liam, here's your tea," I said with a smile, placing the cup beside him. Even his name had been given by my father. Dad said Liam's nature was gentle and refined, but underneath that softness was an unyielding spirit. He hoped Liam would be steeped in the essence of literature, carrying gentleness both inside and out. Liam smiled and said, "After all these years, the little rascal had turned into a big rascal, still just as good at fighting, huh?" There was a trace of amusement in Liam's voice, almost doting, and hearing it made my ears burn. I had been a mischievous child since I was little. As the only girl in the family, my parents let me grow up freely. I spent my childhood playing and fighting with the neighborhood kids. I got into trouble all the time, but I never hit anyone for no reason. After graduation, I stopped fighting. I was a doctor, I knew my limits. I hurried to explain, afraid I might have left a bad impression. Liam's eyes were full of laughter. Suddenly, he asked, I heard from your father that you're transferring to the military hospital? I nodded, not quite understanding why he brought it up. Blinking curiously, I looked at him. He explained, I'm stationed at a unit nearby. If you need anything, feel free to find me. I came on short notice today and still have a meeting to attend later. Could you tell Mr. Lin that I agreed to what he asked? I blinked, surprised, and asked, You agreed to what, exactly? He gave me a meaningful look, then stood up and walked toward me. He was 6'2". I was 5'5". Standing in front of him, I suddenly felt so small and delicate. His shadow completely enveloped me, like I was wrapped in his arms. The pressure made me instinctively take 2 steps back. He smiled and said, I'll go now. Next time we meet, we can catch up properly, Piggy. Then he pushed open the door and left. I rushed after him to see him off but noticed he was talking to his military escort. I didn't dare go over, so I simply waved. He waved back at me. In that moment, I felt like my mom seeing my dad off to work. Especially when he casually called me by my childhood nickname, it made me blush and storm back into the house in embarrassment. Behind me, the escort said in a low voice, Sir, this girl's got quite the temper. Liam rubbed his fingers together behind his back and replied seriously, That's good. A temper means she won't be easily bullied. Shall we go? The escort asked, confused. Weren't you here to propose, Major? You're just gonna leave without saying anything? Liam gave it some thought. Isn't free love all the rage these days? Dating before marriage is totally acceptable. The escort paused for a second, then quickly followed behind him. Not long after, someone knocked on the door. Thinking it was Liam, I ran out and opened it eagerly. But the moment I saw who it was, my pupils contracted. The woman standing there wasn't particularly beautiful, but she gave off an air of pristine innocence, like a lotus emerging unstained from the mud. It was none other than Cindy, the opportunist from my previous life. I crossed my arms calmly and stared at her. In our last life, she had been more composed than this. She must have sensed how coldly I'd treated Brian and, realizing she couldn't get through me via him, had decided to come here herself. That worked perfectly for me. Cindy went straight to the point. Miss Lin, may I ask why you rejected Brian's proposal? Was it because of me? I can assure you, I'm just like a younger sister to him. Please don't misunderstand. I scoffed. Miss, who are you again? I have no relationship with Brian, and even less with you. Please speak responsibly. For a moment, Cindy looked embarrassed, though I caught a flash of disdain in her eyes. She stepped forward and said, Miss Lin, don't you remember me? Last time you came to visit Brian, you saw me there. I'm his sister-in-law. My name is Cindy. Oh, now I remember. Brian did mention he had a younger sister. I smiled icily. One with no real skills but wants a prestigious job. I hear Brian has some power. Instead of chatting with me here, why don't you go ask him to pull some strings for you? You seem to like him quite a bit anyway. Instead of watching him marry someone else, she figured she might as well fight for it herself. Otherwise, once he was married, if she tried to get close again, it would be considered interfering with a military marriage, a serious crime. In my previous life, the inheritance my parents left me was treated as if it belonged to Brian's family. The grudge I carried from dying in prison, I was determined to settle it in this lifetime. With that thought, my gaze towards Cindy turned cold. This woman always put on a delicate, helpless act, as if the whole world owed her protection. It was the same at the hospital. When something needed doing, she'd step aside. But when benefits were involved, she was always right there, cozying up to anyone who could help her. She had ambiguous relationships with several male colleagues. Brian, who was stationed away most of the time, never saw her true colors. Later, she transferred to the military hospital on his side, and that's when they got together. Though it wouldn't surprise me if she'd targeted him from the start. Maybe Brian liked that type, fragile and scheming. In this life, I hoped the two of them would stay locked together, dragging each other down. But now wasn't the time to tear things open between me and Cindy, so I held in my anger, turned around, and shut the door. Cindy strolled back to her house, and the moment she saw Brian still sitting there, her eyes turned red. Brian, this is all my fault. I didn't explain clearly to Miss Lynn about our relationship, and now she's misunderstood and thinks I'm your girlfriend. What if she spreads rumors about us? How will I ever show my face in public again? She covered her face and started sobbing. Brian, his face still scratched and swollen, panicked and immediately got up to comfort her. Don't cry, Cindy. She's not the kind to gossip. But what if she does? If my reputation is ruined, who would ever marry me? Cindy sobbed even harder. How could Brian not feel sorry for her? He immediately promised, "Don't worry, Cindy. If your reputation is damaged because of me, I'll take full responsibility." Only then did she stop crying, looking up at him with watery eyes. Really? Brian, you're not just saying that because you pity me, right? Of course not, Brian replied. You're such a kind person. If I could marry you, it would be the greatest blessing of my life. Once your transfer comes through, I'll persuade my parents. I'll bring you home as my wife. Cindy lowered her head, her expression darkening. So Brian still cared whether she had a good job or not. Just as she expected, all men are the same. If that was what it took, then she had no choice but to get that job. And if I wouldn't hand over the opportunity willingly, she'd find a way to make me give it up. On Monday, I went to work and quickly noticed the strange looks my colleagues were giving me. They started whispering behind my back. Isn't she just from a good family? And yet she still needed backdoor help to get such a great job. Seriously, don't you think something shady went on with that transfer? Well, good looks have their advantages, makes it easy to seduce someone. I turned around and grabbed the nurse who'd just spoken. Who were you talking about? She looked embarrassed. I wasn't talking about you. Why are you taking things so personally? Yeah, Miss Lynn, they were just chatting. Don't take it too seriously. I hadn't even noticed when Cindy appeared. She was standing nearby, pretending to mediate on my behalf. Miss Lynn, don't mind them. They didn't mean anything by it. The nurses straightened up as soon as Cindy spoke. Dr. Cindy, you can vouch for us, right? We were just talking about some other woman. It was Miss Lynn who took it personally. The way they kept calling me Miss instead of Doctor made their intent crystal clear. I gave a sarcastic smile and said, This is a hospital. If you're looking to play maids and mistresses, you're in the wrong place. What are you talking about? One of them snapped. Who's trying to be a maid? I was joking, I replied with a cold smile. But seriously, watch your mouths. This is a hospital. There are no misses here, only doctors. Please call me Dr. Lynn. Then I turned to Cindy. What do you think, Dr. Cindy? Her expression froze for a second, but then she smiled and said, You're right, Dr. Lynn. We're all colleagues here. We should support one another. I'm sure you wouldn't hold a few careless words against us, right? The nurses chimed in. Yeah, Dr. Cindy's so understanding. Honestly, we think the transfer should have gone to her in the first place. The director is so biased. What hope do people from ordinary families like us have? One nurse muttered. The flash of satisfaction in Cindy's eyes quickly vanished, but I caught it. I knew exactly what this was, her strategy. Stir others up to challenge me while she waited to reap the benefits from the shadows. Heroes shouldn't be judged by their background. Yet some people choose to stay mediocre and then resent others for excelling. People like that, they'll go their whole lives without ever affording a full 4-course meal. With that, I turned to leave. But Cindy stepped in front of me. Dr. Lynn, do you dare make a bet with me? My heart tightened, so she was finally taking the bait. Cindy continued, Let's bet on our medical skills. Let's see which of us patients rate more highly. If I win, you give up the transfer. And if you win... She sneered. Well, Dr. Lynn, your mouth sure is more skilled than your hands. Lynn, what kind of attitude is that toward Cindy? Brian suddenly appeared, grabbing me as if he were afraid I'd bully his precious little sister. Cindy clung to his sleeve, voice trembling with pretend innocence. Brian, maybe I just don't have what it takes. If people look down on me, I guess I deserve it. I rolled my eyes. This woman was seriously committed to playing weak. Brian barked. Lynn, I'm ordering you to apologize to Cindy. You've gone too far. Even if I can't marry you, that doesn't mean you have to make things hard for her. God, this guy was so full of himself, it was almost impressive. Brian, I said flatly, maybe you should get your facts straight. It was your little sister who challenged me, not the other way around. If anyone needs to apologize, it's her. Brian was briefly stunned. Then he turned to look at Cindy. Cindy's eyes filled with tears, shimmering with a calculated vulnerability. Brian's heart clearly softened. "Brian," she sniffled, "I just want a fair chance to compete. I believe in my skills. I hope you believe in me too." Brian immediately took her side. "Cindy's skills are already better than yours. You know exactly how you got this position." I was furious. I lunged forward and slapped him across the face before he could react. The slap left a bright mark on his cheek. "Is one slap not enough for you? Want another? I've been way too polite to you, and to her. If you two have no shame, at least stop trying to flaunt it in my face." The whole thing blew up and quickly reached the director. He called me into his office. "What are you doing, stirring up trouble like this?" the director scolded. "If your skills are truly that good, then stay humble. Put that energy into doing more surgeries instead. Speaking of which, a high-ranking official came in today. This surgery must be flawless. I want you on it." The director had always trusted my abilities. He often assigned me the most complex procedures. But just as I was about to leave, Cindy barged in. "Director," she said, barely containing her indignation, "you're being unfair. You always give every opportunity to Dr. Lin. How are the rest of us supposed to grow?" The director frowned. I chuckled coldly in my mind. So she really just said that? Practicing on patients to grow? Did she even hear herself? Some patients only get one chance at survival. Once you open them up, you're battling death. It's not a game. It's either success or failure, no in between. Brian walked in too. When the director saw the fresh slap mark on his face, his gaze sharpened as he looked at me. I lowered my eyes, not daring to meet his. The director sighed. "Fine, since Dr. Cindy is so confident, I'll give her the chance this time. But let me make one thing clear. This patient is special. There can be no mistakes. One wrong move and your entire career could be over." Cindy clearly didn't take the warning seriously. "Don't worry, director. I know this isn't child's play. I won't let you down." After leaving the office, Cindy went to prep for surgery. I didn't have any procedures scheduled that morning, so I planned to review the patient's records like the director mentioned. But just as I turned the corner, Brian blocked my path. "You happy now?" he sneered. "Happy? What would I be happy about?" I sneered. "If you mean slapping you, yeah, I admit, I felt great after that. What? You offering yourself up again so I can hit you twice?" I stared at Brian with open provocation. I had become a rose in full bloom, bristling with thorns. In my past life, I had loved Brian so much that I turned myself into the kind of soft, flavorless toast he preferred. But this time, I'd make sure he understood. Roses have thorns. Not everyone is qualified to touch them. "Lynn," he said, "don't think that just because I tolerated you once, it means I have feelings for you. It was you who liked me, not the other way around." "So you always knew," I replied quietly. "You knew how I felt and still chose to trample on my sincerity. You spread rumors about me like it was nothing. Brian, you're truly disgusting. You don't deserve my affection." I looked him in the eye. "From today onward, I don't like you anymore." "You don't like me anymore?" he asked, his voice a little colder. I nodded. "That's right, I don't like you anymore. In fact, I already like someone else." His face darkened, but I didn't care. I turned to head back to my office, only for the director to come running out. "Lynn," he shouted. "Dr. Cindy made a mistake. The patient's in critical condition. Hurry up and prep for surgery." I froze. Cindy had already botched the procedure? It had barely even started. What did she do? Make the wrong incision? The director didn't wait for my reply. He was already heading off to change into his surgical scrubs. I shoved Brian aside and muttered, "So this is the medical talent you two brag about? Are patients just gambling chips to you?" I didn't even look at Brian's shocked expression as I rushed to join the director. We changed and entered the OR. Outside the operating room, Cindy stood drenched in blood, trembling all over. The nurses who had backed her earlier were now silent, standing off to the side, too afraid to say anything. The surgery lasted 5 hours. Together, the director and I pulled the patient back from the edge of death and transferred them to intensive care. I was completely exhausted. Supporting the director, who could barely stand himself, we made our way out for some rest. That's when Cindy and Brian stepped in to block our path. "Director," Cindy said, "I didn't mean to mess up. It was an accident, just a mistake." The director looked at her with deep disappointment. Dr. Cindy, for a doctor, there's no such thing as a mistake. Any lapse in judgment is a betrayal of life itself. You're not suited for this profession. I'll have you reassigned to a nursing role. If the patient insists on pursuing accountability, you'll have to face the consequences. The director had shown mercy, making arrangements in advance to protect Cindy. If the patient woke up and chose to press charges, a simple demotion wouldn't be enough to cover it. But Brian still wanted to shield her. Director, Cindy didn't do it on purpose. It must have been because the nurses gave her incomplete patient records. That's why she made the wrong call. Yes, that's exactly what happened, Cindy echoed. The files were incomplete, and I misjudged the situation. The nurses who'd prepared the case files went pale. I had no patience for their nonsense. If you can't even identify where the error came from, how dare you call yourself a doctor? Director, let's go. Talking to people this clueless is just a waste of energy. I supported the director as we walked off, leaving Brian grinding his teeth behind us. Cindy clutched at him, crying, Brian, what do I do now? I didn't mean to mess up. The director has always favored Dr. Lin. I never had enough hands-on opportunities, so I wasn't prepared. You believe me, right? Brian comforted her. Of course I believe you. Don't worry, I'll figure something out. Cindy threw her arms around him. Thank you, Brian. Some of the nurses pointed and whispered at them. Brian quickly pulled away, but Cindy clenched her fists. She had failed this time, so she couldn't afford to wait any longer. Otherwise, Brian would definitely kick her aside. After work, I was pushing my bicycle down the road when, unsurprisingly, I ran into Brian. He stood in the wind, clearly having waited a long time. I pretended not to see him and tried to ride past, but he grabbed the back seat of my bike. Dr. Lin, can we talk? He said. There's nothing to talk about between us, I replied impatiently. Brian said, I admit I underestimated your medical skill before. I apologize for that. But what I want to say is Cindy isn't a bad person. What happened was truly an accident. And? I asked. So, could you maybe talk to the director and help her out? Maybe say it wasn't entirely her fault? I laughed. The night breeze felt nice, and I was sure my smile looked lovely because Brian stared at me, completely dazed. I took advantage of his daze and slapped him hard across the face. He stumbled back 2 steps and let go of my bike. Feeling clear-headed now? I sneered. How dare you ask me for that? If you feel so bad for Cindy, why don't you take responsibility for her yourself? Just leave me out of it. And let me be clear, if you bother me again, I'll slap you every time I see you. My hands stung, but I felt a satisfying lightness in my chest. What I didn't notice was the way Brian watched my back in the night, eyes filled with something unreadable. From that moment on, his attitude toward me completely shifted. By the time I realized it, I had already transferred to the military hospital and had run into him twice. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but the second time felt intentional. Dr. Lin, hello, I'm here to see a doctor, he said. I don't do urology. Try a different department, I replied, throwing a jab at his manhood. He didn't even get angry. Instead, he said, Cindy will be starting work here in a few days. I hope you two can get along. Was he brain damaged? I'd said all kinds of harsh things and slapped him, yet it hadn't knocked any sense into him. Brian, you seem very capable. I wish you and Cindy a happy marriage and many children, I said dismissively. I tried to walk past him, but he blocked my way again and even reached out to grab me. Startled, I took a step back. What are you doing? A gentleman uses his words, not his hands. And how many times have you used your hands on me? He shot back. I hit you because you deserved it, I said firmly. Brian pressed his lips together, his expression serious. I only see Cindy as a sister. Lin, I've realized I like you. I want to start over with you. I stepped back again, staring at him like he was a lunatic. Had I slapped him so many times he'd gotten confused and thought it was love? If he was into this kind of thing, I begged the heavens to assign him someone else. He liked me, but I didn't like him. I won't ever like Cindy the way you think, he insisted. I only like you. His words made my skin crawl. I turned on my heel and walked away. From behind, he called out, Next time I get a break, I'm going to your house to propose. You're insane, I yelled back. I don't like you, and even if you show up with a ring, I'll never marry you. I had no idea what kind of delusional spiral Brian had fallen into, but regardless of how deep it went, I knew one thing for certain: I would never be with him. If there had to be something between us, then I hoped it was either he died or I lived. As I was leaving the hospital, I heard someone call out, "Piggy." I frowned. Not just anyone was allowed to call me by my childhood nickname, but when I saw who it was, my temper instantly disappeared. Smiling, I said, "Liam, my dad said you were back, but I haven't had time to catch up. Come on, let me take you out for a welcome meal." The moment I saw Liam Evans, I started plotting. During dinner, I asked, "Liam, are you married?" He paused as he was about to serve me. Then, with a soft smile, he placed one of my favorite spring rolls into my bowl and said, "No." Biting my lip, I gathered my courage and asked, "Then, will you marry me?" He looked up at me, a gentle smile in his eyes. His gaze made my face flush red. It was because Brian wouldn't stop bothering me. I didn't like Brian anymore. I didn't want to give him any chance to cling to me again. "Then do you like me?" Liam asked. His tone was calm and composed, as if he were simply asking about the weather. I stared at his sharp, flawless face and the natural authority he carried without even trying. He was a truly outstanding man. Of course I was moved. In this lifetime, I didn't want to live like a widow again. Was it so wrong to want a high-quality man? I picked up some food and placed it in Liam's bowl. In a soft voice, I said, "Yes, I like you. That's why I want to marry you." His fingers tightened around his chopsticks. Then, suddenly, he asked, "Did you bring your ID?" "What?" I blinked, not understanding. "You said you wanted to marry me," he said, matter of fact. "I happen to be free today. We can register right away. As for the wedding and dowry, I'll take care of those later. What do you think?" His grip on the chopsticks got even tighter. His fingertips had gone pale from the pressure. I touched my chin and thought for a second. Sure, why not? 3 hours later, Liam and I each held a small red booklet in our hands, our expedited marriage certificates. Our wedding photo was hastily taken, but official. "Shouldn't you start calling me something different now?" I teased. "What do you want to call me then?" he asked. "Husband," I said. His ears turned red. He looked at me with an intense gaze, his voice slightly hoarse. "I have a task in the next few days. When I'm back, I'll help you move in." I nodded casually. I wasn't in a rush to live together, or maybe I was. In truth, I was eager. After all, this time around, I had no plans to live like a widow. Just looking at Liam's tall, lean body made my nose feel warm. I nearly had a nosebleed. After Liam left on his assignment, life returned to normal for me. Brian had strangely stopped bothering me, which gave me a bit of peace. But soon, rumors began circulating in the hospital about my private life. People were saying I seduced a military officer. Even some patients, especially female ones, started avoiding me. Instead, they preferred to see Cindy, even though she was just a nurse. Cindy's reputation soared. People praised her beauty and kindness. Slowly, others began whispering that I had only transferred here because of my connections, because of a man. The director, under pressure, spoke with me several times. I eventually showed him my marriage certificate, and only then did he relax. As I stepped out of his office, marriage certificate in hand, I ran straight into Brian. His eyes were red, his lips trembled. "You got married?" "What's it to you?" I said coldly. "Who I marry is none of your business. What matters is, it's not you." Brian suddenly lunged forward and hugged me tightly. "You can't marry someone else. You started this, you led me on. You can only marry me." I struggled to break free and shoved him hard. "What the hell is wrong with you? I'd rather stay single for life than marry you." "You disgust me. Go marry Cindy instead." Brian's face twisted. He said urgently, "You're just jealous, aren't you? Don't worry, I have no romantic feelings for Cindy. I only love you. Lynn, please, come with me to register our marriage, okay? I'll treat you right, I swear." Furious, I reached out and yanked his ear with all my strength. "No, absolutely not. Brian, I don't love you. I have a husband. If you keep harassing me, I'll report you for interfering in a military marriage." My words stunned him. He stood frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. Then he snatched the marriage certificate out of my hands. When he saw who was in the photo, his pupils contracted sharply. How could it be him?" "You're already with him?" Brian asked. "He's away on a mission," I replied. "You two haven't even had the chance to be together yet." I found him absolutely disgusting. First, he was the one who claimed not to like me. Now he thought he had a say in who I was with. Classic Brian, wanting to have it both ways. I've never done anything to wrong you, I said coldly. If you keep letting Cindy spread rumors about me, I won't let it slide. When my husband gets back, I'll report everything. Then I yanked the marriage certificate out of his hand and turned to leave, completely missing the way his bloodshot eyes filled with rage and the terrifying greed in his expression. I won't let him come back. If you're married, then widowhood is still an option, right? I won't let anyone else have you. I thought things were finally clear between me and Brian. Cindy, too, seemed to quiet down for a while. But one day, she came looking for me, asking for help. You must have a lot of methods, she said. Military marriages are complicated. If you could destroy my reputation, why not do the same to yours and win him over? Once you do that, would Brian really deny you a proper title? Cindy hesitated after saying that, then fell silent. I could tell she was seriously considering it. Exactly what I wanted. Let them tear each other apart. Sure enough, the next day Brian showed up looking utterly disheveled. I was honestly startled. His neck was covered in hickeys. It was you, wasn't it? He demanded. You told her to do that. Is that what my love means to you? Something to be used like this? I sneered. Even if I did tell Cindy to come to you, you still would have had to say yes, right? Judging by the look of you, this wasn't your first time either. So spare me the sanctimonious act. Brian's face darkened. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but no words came out. Cindy came after him, also with marks all over her neck. She clung to his arm, her eyes sparkling with triumph. Brian, you're exhausted. Why'd you even come out here? Let's go back, okay? Brian shoved her hand off, and Cindy immediately burst into tears. Brian, you're not going to abandon me, are you? I gave you my body. How can you just walk away? I raised an eyebrow in surprise. So she'd been a virgin after all? Brian must have really been tricked. Probably got drunk, and then whether she was pure or not, it was all up to her word. Brian's expression turned ice cold. He looked at Cindy as if he were seeing her for the first time. You think I would have touched you if you hadn't drugged me? He asked. Cindy's face went pale. I won't expose you, he continued, but don't expect me to take responsibility. I love Lynn, not you. I only ever saw you as a sister. I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. Seriously, what kind of siblings do that kind of thing? I spoke with pure indifference. You two go sort it out. I have patience to see. Honestly, I didn't want even a shred of that drama rubbing off on me. The way they showed up like that, Cindy had clearly planned it. Their reputations were now both a mess, and I wanted no part of it. But Brian grabbed my arm. You're not leaving. We need to talk. I laughed. We've said everything that needed saying. The one you need to talk to is Cindy, not me. Your mess has nothing to do with me. My cold attitude drained him completely. He couldn't even keep holding me back. Instead, he turned and dragged Cindy away. We need to talk. But Brian, she cried, I think I might be pregnant with your baby. You can't treat me like this just because of another woman. That seemed to wake him up. He had someone get her emergency contraception and made sure she took it. Next time I saw her, she was glaring at me like a vengeful ghost. You must be satisfied now, she spat. My reputation's ruined, and Brian still doesn't want to marry me. You've had your revenge. Not yet, I thought. If you're so desperate, I said to myself, why don't you get pregnant for real? Isn't that your go-to move, using a baby to lock a man down? Cindy hesitated, then clenched her jaw and stormed off. Some time passed, and I started to feel increasingly uneasy. Liam had said he'd be gone for just a few days, but it had already been much longer, and I hadn't heard a single word from him. I didn't dare ask around, but deep down I couldn't stop wondering. Had something happened to him? That night, the director called me. He told me to come in and lead an emergency surgery. But when I saw the person lying on the operating table, everything went dark. I nearly fainted. It was Liam. There was no time for questions. One of the senior officers informed me. Captain Evans was ambushed. He's in critical condition. Orders from above say we must do whatever it takes to bring him back from the brink of death. Dr. Lin, we need your full cooperation. I took a deep breath and nodded, forcing myself to stay calm. I couldn't let Liam die. He was such a good man. Had all those prayers I made for him in my past life been for nothing? Why is it always the good ones who suffer? while the wicked walk free. I kissed the hand that held the scalpel. I swore to myself I would save Liam. If fate was unfair, I would rewrite it myself. We operated for 8 straight hours. Finally, we pulled Liam back from death's edge. When I stepped out of the OR, my legs gave out. My vision went black, and I fainted. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Brian's face. His expression was twisted, and the look in his eyes was terrifying. "You're awake," he said, his voice ice cold. I immediately felt a chill crawl down my spine. This is your house?" I asked, horrified. "Why am I here? I should be in the hospital." "I had someone bring you here," he said. "I couldn't stand the thought of you being with Liam, not even for a minute. Liam will never take you from me. Lynn, you're mine." He stared at me with a crazed obsession that made my stomach turn. "You're insane," I whispered. "I'm already married." "That doesn't matter," he replied. "Liam won't make it through the night. By tomorrow, you'll be a widow, and I'll be your husband. I won't mind. I don't care what people say." "Well, I mind," I snapped. "You bastard. You did this to Liam, didn't you? I swear, if he dies, I'll never forgive you. You'll pay for this." Brian smirked. "Even if I die, I'll make sure we die together." His words scared me to my core. Why was he suddenly so obsessed with me? Back when I loved him, he ignored me. Now that I wanted nothing to do with him, he was deluded into thinking this was some kind of tragic romance. I tried to sit up, but my limbs were limp. I looked at him in panic. "I just gave you a little something to calm you down," he said. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Once Liam's dead and we're married, I'll give you your freedom. Lynn, don't reject me. You know I can't bear to hear you say no." "Please," I begged. "Don't hurt Liam. He's a good man. Please." In that moment, a dangerous thought crossed my mind. If it came down to it, I would take Brian down with me. "If he doesn't die," Brian said, "will you still marry me? Whether he's good or not doesn't matter. If he wants to marry you, then he has to die." Brian had completely lost it, so I said softly, "Fine. I'll divorce Liam and marry you. But I want a proper ceremony. I want you to tell everyone clearly that I was never the third party in your relationship." His expression softened just slightly. There was a twisted tenderness in his eyes. "Of course you're not the other woman," he said. "I know you're special. You're the best woman I've ever known. And once you're my wife, I'll make sure you're the happiest woman in the world." I looked up just in time to see Cindy walking in with a tray of food. I gave her a warm, gentle smile. "I believe you," I said sweetly. "So what about Cindy? Should we treat her like a little sister now?" Brian glanced back at Cindy. Her face had turned completely pale. He got up and took her outside. I sat restlessly, waiting for Brian to return. When he finally came back, there was a suspicious scratch at the corner of his lips. Clearly, calming Cindy down hadn't been easy. "She won't get in the way between us," he said. "I'll treat her like a sister. The only one I love is you." He stared at me blankly, and then, as if suddenly struck by something, he said, "Once Liam's dead, I'll take you to register our marriage. Lynn, you're mine. I won't let any other man have you." A chill ran through my entire body. This man was truly insane. I wished he'd just die already. Still, I didn't want to provoke him, so I tried to coax him gently, feigning softness to win his sympathy, hoping he wouldn't keep drugging me. The next day, Brian came back looking absolutely terrible. He'd clearly been drinking all night. From Cindy, I learned that Liam had been transferred to a location inaccessible to civilians. I was overjoyed. The director must have taken my advice. Now all I had to do was wait for Liam to wake up. To be fair, Brian still had a shred of conscience. He hadn't tried to force himself on me. But the way he looked at me grew more and more possessive and predatory. I knew if I didn't act soon, I'd really fall into his trap. Revenge wasn't worth it if I had to destroy myself in the process. So I began flattering Brian, deliberately creating the illusion that I was falling for him again. When he couldn't hold back his desire, he still refrained from touching me. Instead, he turned to Cindy. Like that, nearly a month passed. Then I discovered Cindy was pregnant. I carefully sowed doubt with her, pushing her toward letting me go. Cindy agreed. That night, as I made my escape, Brian found out and chased after me. Cindy tried to stop him, clinging to him and begging him not to go. He kicked her away without hesitation. Cindy fell to the ground, clutching her stomach and screaming in pain. Blood poured out of her. But I didn't look back. I didn't feel sorry for her at all. If I had turned around, there would have been no escape. And if Cindy lost the baby, she'd only hate me more. That would be the end of me. Brian chased me all the way into the street. I screamed for help. Suddenly, someone stepped in front of me and shouted, "We found her! Grab Brian!" I looked up and saw Liam. In that moment, every bit of grief I'd bottled up rushed to the surface. But I still worried about his injuries. He tried to hug me, but there were so many bandages he couldn't figure out how to do it. I grabbed his hand and burst into tears. "Why did it take you so long to find me? I was being tormented to death." "It's okay now," he said gently. "It's all over. This was my fault. I'll never let it happen again." His voice was full of remorse and tenderness. Surrounded by so many people, I felt a little embarrassed. Brian glared at Liam with bloodshot eyes and shouted, "You're not dead? You should be. Give Lynn back to me. She's mine." Liam pulled me tightly into his arms and said, "Brian, you leaked military intelligence and harmed a fellow officer. You'll be reporting everything to Commander Lee yourself." Liam brought me home. Later, I learned that Cindy had suffered a miscarriage, and by the time she was found, it was too late. Her uterus had to be removed. She barely survived. When she heard that Brian had been sentenced to over 40 years in prison, she immediately claimed she'd been coerced by him. But no one believed her. Once she recovered, she started looking for her next target. Her reputation at the hospital plummeted. The only patients who sought her out were thuggish men. Eventually, when Brian's parents found out everything, they stormed into the hospital. That's when everyone finally realized Cindy had been the real connection all along. She lost her job and was disgraced. In the end, she had no choice but to slink back to her hometown in shame. Back in her hometown, once people found out Cindy couldn't have children, Brian's parents arranged for her to marry a man who already had a kid, just so she wouldn't disgrace their family line. She spent the rest of her life being beaten and scolded by that old man. In her old age, no one cared for her. She ended up being left in a shabby thatched hut. And one stormy night, the roof collapsed in the wind and killed her. Her body wasn't found until the stench led someone there. 2 years after marrying Liam, one evening after dinner, he kissed the corner of my eye, his gaze full of longing. "Piggy," he murmured as he wrapped his arms around me. "Shouldn't we have a baby?" I nudged his shoulder. "That's enough. We've been an old married couple for years. Why are you suddenly acting like this?" "Wife," he said, inching closer, "I just want to kiss you." Right then, someone shouted from outside, "Captain Liam, I have something to report." He reluctantly pulled away from my neck. "Wait for me to come back," he said, and rushed out. I couldn't help but laugh. Liam really did love me. He once told me he had thought I was adorable even when I was a kid. Back then, he hadn't dared think about me that way. But after I grew up, my parents worried that my personality was too blunt to be trusted to just anyone. They wanted someone steady like him to look after me. So they asked him to consider marrying me. That time he came back home. It was for a formal meeting. If I agreed, they would proceed with the engagement. Later, when he found out I had married him just to escape Brian, he still went along with it. But over time, he became greedy. He wanted me to truly love him. He once said I was the one who saved his life. That after waking up in the hospital, he had searched desperately for me. But Brian had hidden me too well. No one could find me. That day, they had followed Cindy to track down Brian, and that's how they found me at last. I rested my hand gently on my belly and curled my lips into a smile. I was already pregnant. In this lifetime, I didn't end up alone. I had sent those who hurt me to a place even crueler than hell. There are 3,000 kinds of suffering in this world. Let's see how they survive them. As for me, I was going to live happily ever after with my parents, Liam, and our children. Brian had never taken me, Lynn, seriously. He thought I was pampered, delicate, just a spoiled girl. Cindy was different. But over time, when I stopped being soft with him, stopped catering to him, when I said I didn't love him, he panicked. That's when he realized he had fallen for me. But I had no intention of going back. Brian never meant to get involved with Cindy. That night, he had mistaken her for someone else and made a terrible mistake. The moment he woke up, he knew he had screwed up. But he got greedy. Even when I didn't want him, he still wanted me. Wanted me to love him with all my heart, all my soul. Later, he saw for himself how I treated Liam and realized I had truly meant what I said. I didn't want him anymore. Everything that followed was the result of Brian's own greed. The obsession, the chaos, it was all his doing, and it dragged a lot of people down with him. Too bad the one person he most wanted to destroy, Liam, never died. When Brian was in prison under Old Lie's watch, he heard that I had given birth to a son and had become a chief surgeon. People spoke of me with admiration and respect. On his deathbed, riddled with illness, he asked if he could see me one last time. But all he caught was a glimpse of my back as I hurried into the OR. Just like that day years ago when we had first missed our chance. And this time, he understood. That moment was truly the end of everything. Brian took his final breath and died, full of regret.